Liberate your mind. You ever feel constrained by our politics? Like you're stuck on a continuum of far left or far right extreme ideologies? That the news channels are producing fear and outrage to keep you glued to the screen? There must be a way to liberate yourself from the collective dialogue and form your own opinions and perspective. Well, we think the solution starts with having confidence in your own ideas, admitting how little you understand, and fostering the curiosity to remain a lifelong learner. Now I'd like to introduce you to Ignasi Bolto. He's a freelance artist, musician, photographer, and most famously, the creator and host of the Spanish Libertarian YouTube channel. He's here to share his story of how he came to rely on himself and his own ideas to create income, maintain relationships, and develop his political perspective. Hey, welcome to Do This Podcast. This is Vincent Diaiso. You might notice that I'm missing Louis Risk, my co-host. He's on vacation this week, so shout out to him. I'll be sure to make a couple sarcastic jokes in his honor. But don't worry, we still have a really cool show in store for you guys. I'm here with a new friend of mine, Ignacio, and he is the one and only Spanish Libertarian, if you guys have heard of the YouTube channel. And we're going to ask him a little bit about why he became a libertarian and how you can be successful and a freelance worker in 2018 and not be subject to the corporate world and the mercy of bosses and other people and really take control of your life. So, Ignacio, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Vincent. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm so glad that you came to Prague just to kind of hang out with me and have this conversation. I've really been looking forward to this for a long time. And also a special shout out to Fonseca. If you watched the previous episode, he's the guy who introduced us and helped put this show together. So shout out to him and all the guys at Visual Politic over there for helping us out with this one. So Ignacio, you are the Spanish Libertarian. Tell me why you started the YouTube channel.
Okay, I'll try to make this story brief. I started 2014, more or less, because I've seen so many TV shows and programs in where they were talking about politics and etc. And I thought there were good points. And what I basically did is just, as I am a filmmaker and I know how to edit and stuff, I just made some extracts, like sound bites that the Americans say, and then I put it on YouTube. And it was pretty useful, and these kind of sound bites help to the people to get in touch with these new ideas. And then, of course, I've uploaded new conferences and stuff. And I also, more or less, what I did, apart from the YouTube channel itself, I helped many different libertarian institutions in Spain, such as Instituto Juan de Mariana, Students for Liberty, and many others. So I have created more or less, or I've been trying to create a new environment in terms of new political discussion in this libertarian leaning in this case, and I've been trying to combine my skills as a filmmaker with some kind of libertarian activism. That would be.
What do you mean, like, okay, what's the new discussion? So tell me what the old discussion was and how you're trying to change it.
Good point. I think internet has changed everything. So now we have access to new information, new characters, new people, new ideas like this, And sometimes in Spain, we always had this feeling that we go like 5, 10, 15 years after all the new inventions and all the new ideas, etc. But now everything has changed. So what I've been trying to do is to bring new ideas that, for example, this politician Ron Paul from the United States, I was very influenced by, and I try to bring.
Ron Paul or Rand Paul, the
Ron
father.
Paul,
the father,
the father. The Rand Paul.
About 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Yeah, about 2008.
He literally blew my mind. I read a couple of books, and I was like, wow, I've never heard that kind of ideas before. So the previous discussion, at least in Spain, is the classical left versus right, or conservative versus progressive, you can name it as you want. And I think the libertarian ideas, some of them at least, it's like a new fresh air for political discussion, because you want civil rights, you want individual liberty, and you also want free market operating. So it's kind of like the good things of the left and the right ideologies, so to speak. And I tried, as I told you, to at least bring these ideas into the marketplace of ideas.
That's interesting you mentioned Ron Paul. You know, because Ron Paul was very influential. He had a big impact on American politics.
Yeah.
And I don't know how closely you follow it, but after his ascent, this section of the Republicans called the Tea Parties, Tea Party people, Tea Party Republicans, they rose up. And it was kind of funded by like corporations, and it ended up, you know, becoming the Freedom Caucus in the Republican Party. And it's very controversial.
Yeah.
And I always found it kind of weird that you have people going to government whose mission is to kind of deconstruct it. And watching that play out, I can't say I'm a huge proponent of that. Do you follow American politics? And if so, what is your opinion of how the libertarian movement associated with the Ron Paul ideas has played out over the past 10 years?
First of all, I don't think I like the word libertarian. I don't think I like the Libertarian Party. I prefer the word liberal in terms of classical liberal as we know it in Europe. And I prefer the ideas of liberty. That's what I am for. So I try not to label myself in this guy or this party or this set of group. I just like the ideas. So answering your question, what my thing is that we are all humans. We make a lot of mistakes, and I'm sure in the Democrat, Republican, or Libertarian Party, there's a lot of mistakes and there's a lot of good things. But what I try to do in the realm of in the marketplace of ideas is to help each individual or each party, in this case, to be more liberty oriented. You know what I mean? So I don't care if you're a progressive or conservative or whatever. If you're a conservative but you are for gay rights, for instance, that's good for me. If you are a progressive but you are for more free market and entrepreneurship, that's good for me. So I try not to fall into this identity politics trap.
Right.
Like, I am the libertarian, these are my guys, and the other are my enemies. So this is just ideas, and I try to be as much comprehensible for each person that might be interested.
Right. So would you say that the aspect of libertarianism that you identify most with is the aspect of personal responsibility?
Yeah, good point, yeah.
And making your life better and not trying to rely on other people?
Absolutely. That would be the definition. And I think that core definition, then you can extract it like what kind of policies might you apply, what kind of culture we have, how we cooperate with people, etc. So that's like a basic, simple principle of not harm and not force no one in your lifetime, and don't allow no one to force you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But that it might sound like a simple tip, but it has a lot of knowledge there. And I also, as I told you, I think the way you cooperate with people in terms of civil society or the policies that you might apply, I would like at least to see that they are leaning through that direction. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that every person has to be a superhero, and if you are poor, it's your problem. I mean, I'm not for a lack of empathy or no government at all. Mm-hmm. But I think the word that you mentioned, personal responsibility, is very important because it coordinates a more virtuous society, and that's what I'm for 100%.
You know, from what you've seen in Spain and Europe, how do people become more responsible for their lives? How do they become more successful, happy? Do you have a formula or some sort of tip? Because I'll tell you what, you seem like a very independent person, and I know not everybody is. Is it emotional independence? Is that something that you need to get started on, or do you have to be goal oriented? I mean, what do you think? Like, how do people become this way?
I think it's a matter of incentives. I am super obsessed with incentives. I think this is like the invisible hand, as Adam Smith said, that coordinates how people operate. For example, they were doing this interview to the actor Antonio Banderas, and they were making a questionnaire. No, what's the word?
Questionnaire?
Yeah, to the
Survey.
young. Yeah, survey. Excuse me, to the younger people from Spain. What do you prefer to be, entrepreneur or just a public worker? No, that work for the government. And they were making these surveys into the American young guys and the Spanish ones.
Okay.
I think it was like 20/80 and 80/20, so to speak. Most of the Spanish guys wanted to be public work for the government. What does it mean? It means that we are lazy. It means that we don't want to be entrepreneurial. No, I think it's a matter of incentives. If what your parents tell you or what you see on the news is that being an entrepreneur is too risky, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just go for the safe job and don't mess it up and just go to the office from 8 to 3 and that's it. You will choose that direction. What I want to say with that is that you can empower yourself. You can be entrepreneur if you want, but I think what it should change, it would be it should have to change. It would be like the common mentality of what society should be. I mean, taking risk, having more an entrepreneurial environment could create the environment for the people to say like, you know what is cool to do in life is to take risk.
Yeah.
So it's a complicated topic. I don't know.
Yeah,
if
right. I just want
sense.
to touch on a couple of things you just said. So if 80% are leaning towards wanting in Spain,
something like that.
wanting to have a government job, I have to imagine not all of them are lazy. Some of them might care about the government. They might care about whatever it is they're pursuing, and they just don't feel like they want to be the boss. They don't want to boss people around. Maybe they want to serve a greater good. They want to be a part of a team, and maybe they just have a little bit different values. So for me, it's hard to imagine everyone starting their own business and everyone being an entrepreneur, because society requires people to some people to follow others, for large companies to exist, and people to be employees and to be, as I wish, like happy to be an employee, happy to have a job and feel dignity in what they do, and not necessarily be the person who thought of the idea or took the initiative to start it, but even found an opportunity. And for me, it seems like, equal merit, for somebody to start their own business and be successful on that terms, if that's exactly who they are, it's equal amount of happiness that you can get from the other person who takes the other route, maybe the more traditional route, looking for the job, finding the path that way. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but maybe I didn't explain myself correctly. I'm not saying that each one should be his own boss and you should be this Randian, Ayn Rand figure of Superman. I mean, you can be a professional into the division of labor in the chain of value of creating a certain product or taking part of a process or on a big enterprise.
Yeah.
If you specialize and you're a professional and you give value to society, I think that's good enough. That's what I was referring. I mean, empowering yourself, as you were asking before, it doesn't mean that you don't have to be an entrepreneur per se. I mean, the thing is to give value to society and to not force them. I don't want to portray public officers as lazy. I'm not saying that, and I think that would be dishonest for me. But I think that in order to have a decent society, you need a strong private sector. You need professionals competing. You need people obsessed with giving value to the citizens. That incentivizes the economy, and I think that creates value itself. And I think that that's related with the foundation of what a truly free society means.
So for an individual to be happy, you think, in their work, they should be adding value to everyone's life in the way that they feel most necessary or most capable of doing in their way. Is that
exactly? Yeah, you have to be.
It?
Life is about giving your best version at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Yeah. And sometimes, as I was mentioning, the incentives. It operates in a certain way that it's like, why? I mean, if you are more lazy day after day and no one's telling you nothing, you have the incentive of doing, you know what? Why putting more effort on what I do? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see. Let me ask you something. I'm a person who sees a lot of nuance in things. I have a hard time picking a side. Things are just never black and white to me. I see a lot of gray in things. Yeah. And I imagine there's a lot of people who see the complexity in things and often just end up not having a strong position. But you seem like you're really well articulated in your position. I've watched a few of your videos. You seem like a very curious person. So I have a two-part question. The first question is, how did you find your voice? How did you take how you were feeling probably as a young man and turn it into words and turn it into a message? Or was that something that just came natural to you?
You're referring for my job in my YouTube channel, for instance?
I'm talking about your perspective, right? I'm talking about the message that you give out.
It's a good question, actually. I think that the formula, at least for myself, it would be listening more, way more than talking, actually. That's what I've been forcing myself. Because when I was a child, I wouldn't say I was arrogant, but I was like all the time saying my word, my thing, and I don't think that's clever enough. In Spain, we say it, en boca cerrada no entran moscas. Like if you close your mouth, there's no fly coming in. Yeah. I don't know if that would be the translation. So in order to find my voice, I think it's better to try to be empathetic with the other person that you might have in front of you. Yeah. Try to stand in his shoes, try to understand his vision of the world, his vision of reality, and then put it in contrast with the other person, and then the other one, and then the other one, and maybe a mixture of that plus your preconceptions or plus your ideas or plus whatever is going to be your voice. But your voice can be this today, but as you were referring, there's a great shade of grace. Maybe in 2 years I will be thinking different in certain topics. So I think one has to be in a part strong, attached into certain ideas or certain values even more, but also very adaptive and have an open mind and being willing to be truly wrong. You know what I mean? If I have to adapt whatever, I don't know. What do you think about climate change, for example? Very controversial topic. If I don't want to understand what's going on, but I just want to cherry pick all the facts that actually confirm my data, I'm not having an argument. It might sound like, but I'm not having an argument. So I try to force myself to not to be dogmatic. Yeah. And that usually makes you have your mouth shut. Like, man, I don't know about that. I'd rather not prefer to say nothing. And just a tiny little more thing. I think that the more that I know, I'm not implying that I know nothing, but the more that I know, the less that I know. That's this typical quote, ancient quote, but I think it's so true. I mean, for example, you can explain something to be about chemistry, for example. And I can realize that I said, man, I don't know nothing about that, you know? Yeah, right. Now I know that you know. And then I realize how much I don't know about this big, huge field of knowledge, you know? And that's fascinating to me. But also to end this question, this answer, sorry, it makes you feel humble or at least behave like that, you know? My opinion is that, or I think data is showing you that. But if I am angry or if I am throwing my ego to you, like, you know, because my arguments are better and this is my truth, I don't think that's being wise at all. That's being a dick, actually.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so you've interviewed so many people in the last few months, years.
Yeah, 52 or 53.
52 you're up to? Wow, incredible. Yeah. And do you ever get into conversations with ignorant people, closed-minded people, people you find to be stubborn? And how do you deal with that when you do?
No, actually, I don't.
You don't?
I try to pick up interesting people, but not leaning into any certain political group.
Okay, well, forget the interviews, but what about in life? When you encounter stubborn people in life, when you encounter a stubborn person, how do you deal with that?
That's a good question.
Who's
That's a good question. I think a certain amount of condescendence, is that the word? Do you know what I mean?
Condescendence?
Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I know what that means, but I don't know how that answers the question.
If you're an asshole, I don't think I don't have to be upset about it. I will try to help you. I will try to hear you. But if I'm forcing you to change your mind and own you and say like, you're a dick, you're stupid, I mean, what can I do? You know what I mean? I mean, if you find someone who has a closed mind, maybe through rhetoric, you can try to change his mind.
Yeah.
You can try to use arguments in order to put his arguments into the last step, so to speak. If there's a fallacy on the table, I could say like, sorry, that's a fallacy, that's a hominem or a straw man or something like that. But I've seen so many people that gets very upset. It's like, how can you say that to me? No, because you're dumb or you're super dogmatic or whatever. And again, I go back to this humble point. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the stupid guy. You know what I mean? So I don't know if I answered your question. Maybe you can be an irrational person, but I cannot appeal to your rationality because I will be the irrational person. You know what I mean? I cannot expect everyone to be rational because we humans, we don't operate like that.
Yeah, right. I definitely can see that not everybody responds to a rational argument in the first place.
What can you do about it?
Yeah, appeal to their fears, appeal to their emotions.
Yeah.
You know, make them see, you know, something that's true. Not necessarily through an argument, but something that maybe touches their lives personally.
Yeah, and also try to be a good person. For example, in my family, we've had some things related with mental illness, and that gives you a new perspective. When someone is ill, so to speak, you have to have another strategy and another appeal, another way of approaching. You know, and maybe you have you are dogmatic in certain points, whatever, because you had some problems in your childhood. And if I said, you're a dick, you know what I'm talking about. Maybe I want to see through that mask, and maybe I touch or I see your soul, I see your preconceptions, and maybe I can understand that. And maybe through having a civil discussion, maybe I could say like, well, I understand your point, but maybe there's new perspectives. Have you ever thought about that or the other way? Because I think in the conversation, there's too much noise. There's too much trolling. There's too much retweeting, blah, blah, blah. I don't even enter on Twitter. It pisses me off. Yeah. I prefer to just have, if you find someone who has a pursuit of finding truth, let's say, I'm fine with it. And if you don't want to find truth, I will try to use my strategies in order to bring the conversation where I want, but not in terms of fallacy, in terms of being as much honest as I can. You know what I mean? If you want to follow this journey with me, fine. If not, I cannot be friends with anyone, but I wish you the best for your life, and you will go through that direction, I will go through that other one. You know, I mean, that's a free and tolerant society. That's the definition, how I see it. We can disagree, and I don't want you to force you to believe what I believe, and either vice versa.
Yeah. To touch on something you just mentioned about people having problems and issues, and you mentioned mental illness in your family. It seems like everyone has something, at least one little thing. Can I just ask you on a personal level, what was your biggest challenge or problem you felt you had that maybe you overcame through the years? Yeah,
well, I mean, it's not a big deal. I won't write a book about it. Okay. But I could say maybe since my 20s to 25-ish, more or less, they weren't the most happiest years of my life, you know. I guess it's hard for everyone, you know. I mean, I had a decent and happy childhood. Everything was fine. But then entering into the adult life, so to speak, it wasn't easy because as everyone in life, I had my preconceptions, I had my problems. But the thing, as far as I can tell, is that I had to reinvent myself and my personality. I had to go to therapy. I realized I had anxiety. I was having many preconceptions on how I see people. You know, I thought that people had to operate in the way I wanted. And that's a terrible mistake. You don't want to do that because you will be anxious and have some fake expectancies on life. Like, you know, I'm upset at this cloud and I'm upset at this. You know, it makes no sense. Yeah. And I couldn't operate in many different, like in terms of communication or even sexual intimacy. And it was really hard, but I don't regret at all. I think at the end it was very positive, and I think that having some kind of dark moment in your life makes you appreciate the enlightenment. so to speak. So you need that contrast in life, and sometimes you need to rock bottom. No, there is that expression.
Yeah, when you
Once
rock
you,
bottom.
yeah, once you rock bottom, it's actually good news, because that means that you just can go high. You know what I mean? Go up. If you lie to yourself and you say, "Well, I'm not that bad," why do you say that? Maybe you are that bad. Maybe you're having a bad year. Maybe you're having a bad stage of your life. But that's good. Try to be as honest as possible, and maybe we can talk more after this. But it was an interesting journey. I would say that.
Well, take me back to it. Take me back to the rock bottom moment, because a lot of people go through dark times.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people have anxiety issues as well. How do you realize you hit rock bottom, and more importantly, how do you get out?
Yeah, that's hard. I guess there's no formula, and that's the magic of life. I mean, each one has its story and its life and its own thoughts on life. My idea, how can I summarize it, man? You know, you have the angel and the devil here, no? The typical that you see in the movies. And I had this all the times. What you should do and what you do. I guess what you should do, the angel says it to you, and what you do, it could be the devil in your actions. And I don't think you don't have to pick one, because you will be lying to yourself. It's like yin yang or all this stuff. I mean, we are gray. Sometimes we have our demons, we have our angel inside of us. So my way, or my idea of going out of anxiety, it was to help to create the environment in order to let them have a discussion, the angel and the devil. Like, okay, man, what's going on? Let's hear each other's. You know what I mean? Let's be friends. Let's unify in a way. So I was living in my duality, what I should do, what I'm doing, you know. Yeah, that creates anxiety itself. So I kind of create a dialogue, and I unified this duality. And at the end, the rest of it, it's you. It's your personality. It's what you are. So what I did, I went to therapy. I went to hypnosis, self-hypnosis. It was an interesting experience. And I went, as I told you before, I went 2 weeks or 20 days off. And I went to Czech Republic, actually. And I don't know, I read books. I slept. I run. I went through the forest. I take the bicycle. I paint pictures. You know, I did things that I would never expect to do. I forced myself to take the time of like finding yourself, I guess it would be the word, or at least try to have some peace, you know. I remember one day I put in Google Images, I put tranquility, and I started crying. Like, wow, what was the last time that I thought of just this concept, peace of mind? Wow, you have these constant ideas and burning in your mind. And I forced myself to do that, and I realized that I had these demons and I had this angel. But you know, at least you are in a certain path, and then you can continue walking it, and then you will have so many problems in life that I had. But still, you have like this safety net of I won't rock bottom that hard. So at least, you know, you're just growing your personality as much as you can, as honest as you can. And that doesn't mean that I am perfect, that I am not. But at least you are not betraying yourself. That I think it's very important. Having some concepts like integrity or self-honesty are very important to me. And coming back again, being into the darkest side as possible was the triggering. So at the end of the day, don't be anxious to have a bad time, bad 6 months, because that is signals that your body and your mind are telling to you. And if you know how to read this code, it can be a beautiful experience.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that older, wiser people are always telling younger people, is to be patient.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And have some perspective. Think about the time. Think about what a bad thing can become. A bad thing can become a great thing. And I think it's really interesting that you had an internal dialogue and you merged the voices, and it sounds like you formed some sort of compromise, and the compromise of the extremities became your personality. And those are formidable years, and you know, you mentioned 20 to 25.
Yeah.
Those can be tough years for a lot of people, you know, because that's when you're finishing your development, right? And you're going to end up who you are
Yeah.
for a very long time. Maybe
And
the
no
rest
one
of
is
your
going
life.
to help you. I mean, they can have the wish of helping you. They can be good-hearted, but it's your job. No one is inside your brain. You have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
That is an empowerment message. So at the end of the day, it's good.
Yeah, and you being such I guess a person who communicates so much and has conversations with so many people, your perspective and your attitudes probably changed over time. And you said you did 52 interviews already.
Yeah.
How did you change over time through not only conversations with yourself, but conversations with others?
That is a tough one. How have I changed myself in terms of personality? You mean?
I'm really talking. I guess you can probably the easiest approach to this is like thinking politically, like what your attitudes towards your life or your family or even society and how things operate. After interviewing so many people, I'm sure the moment you decided I'm going to start communicating, I'm going to do this YouTube channel. You have a job where you do a lot of communicating. You give speeches, right? And you just talk to a lot of people. But my question is really to go back, if you can go back in time and think of how you viewed the world, what your worldview was, and how that has changed over time. Did you develop empathy? You mentioned empathy. Did you become more open-minded? Did you realize something about yourself? Because I know conversations with family members, like tough conversations that are emotional, they could really yield results and they could help you realize who you are. I love it when my friend tells me what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah.
I love
that.
it.
That are the good friends, actually.
Yeah. And I guess my question to you is I'm trying to say it in a way that, can trigger a response from you. How did the people in your life influence you and make you better?
Well, it depends on many situations. So the question is, how did the people influence me through the years?
Yeah, through the years, because you've just talked to so many people. You've traveled around so much, right? You said you traveled around Europe, basically.
Yeah.
Meeting people, working, and always, it seems like from what you said off camera, that you were always dealing with people.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I do.
Projects, you do a lot of projects. You're a self-starter, entrepreneur. You do your own projects. You make your own work, which I find fascinating. And it's usually, from what you said, dealing with other people, right? Doing, whether it's like, developing a website or doing photography or communications.
I think some people are full of shit. And you realize that quickly. I don't know if it's something in the eyes, something in the manner. And I don't want to be close to that kind of people. That's first, I want to say that. So
Step one, avoid people who are full of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
So if
good
you
advice.
interact with some different people, I'm sure you will find someone like that. So at least you need to understand how the code operates, and if someone is full of shit or someone is a lot too egomaniac or something like that, you just want them out, or you just can interact in whatever you're doing, something professional, and that's it. But if there's people who are just, I don't know, passionate or talented or honest, or they can be super professional, but then, I don't know, drinking a beer, they can show you also the human side. That's the kind of people, that's the environment I want to be involved with. And in my professional side, I do virtual tours, as I told you, and filmmaking and photography, etc. Even my partners or clients, I want to create that environment. Like, okay, here there's a professional interaction. I'm getting paid. You're giving me, I'm doing a service or a product for you. But I want you, because I really mean it, I want you to feel that we are part of something. I am helping you in this step of your own project, of your own life. And if I can add value to you, I'm sure you will appreciate it, and maybe you will think about me in another project. And if you think about it, that's the best networking as possible. I mean, not trying to shit on other people. It will imply that people who are sincere and honest or good-hearted, they will take you in consideration in other projects. So that would be more or less the professional side. And maybe the part of the, regarding the interviews, etc., the academical people that I've been involved with, or some networking event or whatever, it has been a huge journey, because I've been in like 5 summer schools, like 1 week of intense conversation, debates, etc. And I have been some mind-blowing events or conferences or dialogues that was like, wow, this is super interesting. So I guess the summary would be, before these interviews, I've been interviewing many different people for another job. I interview people, artists, and etc. I see that everyone has a cosmovision. That would be a word. Cosmovision, like a vision of life, a vision of reality.
Cosmic vision.
Yeah, like what is? Let's say you are you do bread. What's a job?
Baker?
Yeah, baker, sorry. Maybe you can talk about baking whole day, and that would make sense. Like, do you know the history? Do you know how many people eat it? How many benefits for your health or whatever? And that will be your life. You will wake up and you will go to bed thinking about that. And then the other person will be talking about basketball or podcasting or whatever you do in life. When I try to discover what motivates you, I can understand that I'm not interested in baking or basketball, but the fact that you are passionate about it, it's like mind-blowing. I mean, I like to know people who are passionate about things that are very different or in, compared to my interests. So when I interview someone or whatever, I try to keep some of that passion to me. And then next time I see a baker, I would say like, I get what you do. I understand how you see life. You know what I mean? And when you interact with many different people, and as I said previously, they are not full of shit. They just want to have a conversation or show something that is important to you. That it's like food for your brain. You know. I've been and I force myself to interview many different people: religious, atheists, anarchists, socialists, a guy from the military, a guy who does, altruistic events, whatever. Because if you let people talk and you follow them, they will show you what their meaning of life is. And that forces you to put in contrast your own values and maybe rethink them. Like, wow, there's a person who thinks completely different, or the way I portray my own life. And I think he has a point. You know, and maybe, as I told you before, maybe some of that points you can introduce it into your life, and maybe dismiss some of the thoughts that you had before, thanks to that interaction.
Yeah. Well, other than Ron Paul, who you already mentioned, is there anybody on this aspect of your life that you would consider either a role model or somebody who influenced you in a positive way?
Yeah. In terms of musical, I'm also a musician. I play many different instruments, semi-professional, no big news.
Ignasi, you do everything, man.
No, I don't do nothing. No, not at all. When I was a child, thanks to my father, he introduced me to listen to the music of Frank Zappa, and I was utterly obsessed. And I think Frank Zappa has been a role model to me, because I don't know if you know his figure, but he was like an artist, musician, composer, filmmaker, free thinker. He was taking humor very seriously. You know what I mean? And I got very inspired by him. Like he's like the typical, like Edison was always seeing himself compared to Da Vinci. I try to look at his figure and say like, okay, I'm 34. What was this guy doing at 34? It's like, oh, fuck. I need to work. I need to do more stuff, you know. Being a professional, taking things with an artistic approach, like you want to do something beautiful, and having also a little bit of a sarcastic approach in life in general is very important to me. So I can say he has been a role model. And also, since I learned English, I had access to understand the lyrics and the interviews and etc. And it was mind-blowing to me.
Interesting. How does this bleed over into your family life? Like, you have no kids, you said, but you've been in a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
And how long have you been in that relationship?
Do you want me to say it?
You don't have to.
No, yeah, like 16 years, I think. 16, 15, 17, it's a lot of...
Yeah, it's a lot. And
it's not that common these days.
I was just about to say that it's not common for people to stay in relationships for such a long time.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind me asking, How do you do it? You know, how do you stay together for such a long time, especially since you met her at a very young age?
Yeah, like 19 or 20 years old.
Yeah. I just know so many people who go a couple of years, especially when you meet that person at a young age. But how do you keep it fresh or
I
keep it
guess
going?
like everything in life, when you take a decision, when you pick up A, you will never know what was B like, so to speak. So in a way, we've been like forcing ourselves. Not forcing is a bad word. Like let's continue. Okay, let's move on. Let's try to overcome this problem, etc. And if you take a look at it in retrospective, I'm sure there has been dark moments, of course, moments of doubt, moment of what I've been doing, etc. But the good part of it is that if you find a life partner, so to speak, if you find a person in where you have a shared project, if a person where you have many histories that you've shared with her or him, that creates a I cannot even put it in words. That creates a feeling of like the other person knows how you feel and vice versa. You know what I mean? So the idea is that maybe it's part of this new millennial culture, like everything is dismissible, easy. Next, no, something like that with these Tinder apps. Yeah, I'm not interested in you. I've seen a detail that maybe I don't like it. Okay, I will go to somewhere else. If you take the time to actually try to understand another person, and the other person understands you, and also through the years, because it's a lot of years, both of us have changed in terms of preconceptions or habits or whatever. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. You take a look in retrospective, and it's like, if we're here and it's we are happy and it was worth the effort.
So in a way, you change together.
Yeah.
At the same time, you grow together.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes if I've gone faster and maybe she has gone faster, but if you feel proud of the other person, of his because of his action, her action, sorry, or values, that is a nice feeling, and that's a feeling that you can only have long term, because you don't have the perspective when you are in like 1, 2, 3, 4 years relationship. You know, if you take a look or you just watch photos, like, oh fuck, we were so young, yeah, we were that stupid, you know. But that's beautiful in a way, because now you're a little bit more old, and you've been through many different situations, and I can remember where she has helped me through the years, or I have helped her through the years, and that creates a feeling. That would be the word.
So what do you think, now that we are living in an age where it's becoming easier to meet people for romantic relationships, do you think, like you mentioned earlier, that it's actually dangerous because people are dismissing people too quickly?
I don't know if it's dangerous, but it can be, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but please go on.
No, I was just asking your opinion about it. Is it more bad than it is good? Because I think in a way it's good. Technology is good sometimes. This might be too powerful, but I also see it like it's kind of nice that we live in a day and age where we have more options. Whereas, like, hundreds of years ago, arranged marriages were more common. They still are in parts of the world.
Not hundreds, yeah. Very recently, yeah.
Yeah, and now we just, again, back to the liberties, right? Mm-hmm. We now have the liberty to choose our own partners, to choose our own careers. And it seems like, and of course not everywhere in the world, but at least in our worlds, in Europe and in America, that these liberties are expanding, and the options for our lives are expanding. Travel options, work options. We're living in a new economy, with shared economy that allows us to have more control over our time. And this is one aspect of this new age in which we live in, which I see a lot of nuance in it. And yeah, I think that what you said is true, that like we could easily dismiss people. We can easily overlook like really great things and focus on a really bad thing and just say, you know what, I can just go out tomorrow or next week. And I guess I have your opinion about that, but another thing I was thinking about as far as relationships go, you mentioned when you look back and say, oh, we were young and we were silly and all that stuff. great to hear because it sounds like you made it. But I think there's a lot of people who look back who have the 3 or 4 years relationship, and because it didn't materialize and because it didn't grow into love, they look at that time and they say, "Oh, it was a waste," and then they feel jaded from that, and
I don't think that's a good option because that will make you feel resentful, maybe, or something like that. I don't know. I mean, life is a journey itself. If part of that journey you have shared it with another person, you just have been sharing that part of your life together. If that person actually tried to harm you, okay, that was a waste of time. But if you had your good moments, but it didn't go well, I don't know. Acceptance is always it's very important important in life. Acceptance not meaning like what would be the word, like not caring, like okay, that's life, what can I do? No, I mean, you have to act in life, but you can also you have to accept that there are certain things that you cannot control, and sometimes it's life itself. It didn't work out. What can you do? Also, trying to answer what you said before, I worked in 2008, 1 year. It was one of the most astonishing works I've ever done. I went through Spain, traveling, interviewing old people for a project. It was Experience Archive. That was the name. I interviewed a lot of old people, and that also changed my life and gave me like a lot of perspective, because when you're actually hearing or interviewing someone who is at the last stage of his life, there's some life-changing advices that can really make an impact on you.
Can you give me some examples?
Yeah, I mean, talking about love, there was some people who they said like, I was 16, I had to be with that guy. Oh my God, what a failure, what a shitty life I had thanks to that decision. So having more freedom these days, that's good. Okay, I'm with you with that. But there are also people that they were like 60, 70 or 50 years together. And I've seen something in their eyes that it was like, wow, two souls united. That's unique, and that makes you think, I don't know. And these days we have the freedom, okay, and freedom is nice. I'm 100% for freedom, but freedom has a problem that you have to be responsible. You know what I mean? Being free to dismiss people, okay, you can do it, but sometimes you have to force yourself, if you see that's worth the effort, of like, okay, that's a problem, I won't dismiss you, let's work on it. And as I told you before with the anxiety problem, sometimes overcoming bad moments in life creates a boost that is excellent, and that can be surprisingly a good thing for making a relationship more strong. You know what I mean? Overcoming bad moments. If you just have the liberty, so to speak, to dismiss a person, I don't know. That's a kind of individualism that I don't like.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. You have to
being committed. That's important.
Yes. Yeah, you got to put effort in, commitment, and do some things you don't want to do. You got to compromise. You don't want to compromise.
That makes you feel proud also, and that makes you sleep well, at least in my perspective.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's food for thought. Okay, let's talk about your newest project you mentioned off camera. Can you tell us about the latest thing that you're working on?
This new movement that it has appeared on the States and also UK. It's called the intellectual dark web. I think I was referring to that, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting, and I would like to apply and create that idea for my Latin American Spanish audience.
What exactly is that?
Okay, so what I've seen so far, thanks to these new figures that have appeared, like Joe Rogan, Dave Rubin, Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, the Brett Weinstein and his brother, and many others. So it's like we agree to disagree. I think that's very important in a tolerant and diverse society. So I think it's interesting, and also I think that the TV and the regular shows and the consumption of information is going to change. I think internet is a game changer, 100%. So these new figures have appeared from internet, thanks to internet, and the audience is internet. And the thing is that they are competing with the traditional news corporate media. That everything is like quick and clickbaited, and we have to check the polls and the share rates and all this stuff. So that's the part one, the fact that they come from dark web. That's why they call it like that. And the other part is that it's very diverse. I truly believe in debate and civil discussion, because that is the basis of a better society, less totalitarian, less dogmatic, more with more consensus, more tolerant, more diverse, etc. So the fact that they are diverse, it's beautiful, because they have this common ground of let's talk in a civil way. And I don't think that right-wing extremists nor left-wing extremists like that. And that's what we don't want, I guess, no? We don't want society to go through that both paths, because we've been trying to prove that in the 20th century, and it was a terrible mistake. Right. So I'm been I don't know, this is kind of new, and maybe I won't succeed, but in my short experience in YouTube, I see that many figures are appearing, like Fonseca from Visual Politics might be one of them. People with opinions, but diverse. Maybe Fonseca is more classical liberal oriented. The other one might be more conservative. The other one might be more centrist, leaning to socialism. The other one might be a guy who, I don't know, a cultural figure. Yeah. But if we can talk and we can create a new environment and influence on people, that being tolerant is good, that having a conversation is good, that actually taking care of your brain and your knowledge and hearing people is good, and I, for example, this guy Jordan Peterson, one of the things that I like from him, and many things I don't like, but he's talking to individuals like one per one, the basis of a collective, so to speak, society, it's like half empowered individuals, and I think that we can, I think that this intellectual dark web project proves that. And in Latin America and in Spain, we definitely need that, because we have like low self-esteem, no ambition. We are not tolerant to hear other people's opinions, and we like to have our dogmas and preconceptions. And I think, as I told you, internet is a game-changing, so I'm working on it. I will tell you in half year or 1 year how is it going.
Great, man. I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with.
Okay.
We're running out of time, so do you have any last words for people out there?
Regarding what?
Any advice?
Okay.
How to be you. How to be successful like Ignacio.
Well, I don't like the word successful at all. I think that failure, it can be even more interesting, because it gives you more information. I mean, if you are successful, it's like, okay, everything is right. No, you don't have to think what has happened, But failure is actually giving you information and what you have proved to dismiss, no? So through essay error, you can create your own path. That would be the part one of the advice, maybe. And the second,
don't be afraid to fail.
Don't be afraid to fail and
try.
Don't try as I'm stupid. Don't try to do bungee jumping without a rope. Okay,
of course, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Be reasonable, but don't back down.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a goal or some ambition.
Yeah, but I think if you link failure with knowledge, there's no failure. And that doesn't mean that I am lying to myself. That means that I truly believe that if something goes wrong, I can meditate about it, like, okay, what has happened in here? Okay, I did that mistake again. It's like, at the end of the day, as I told you, the darkest moment can be bright if you know how to deal with it. Failure can be the best triggering in order to have a successful project, thanks to that previous failure. No? And the second one, as I told you before, I think that believing in yourself is quite important, but not this kind of believing in yourself, like being obsessed with yourself and thinking that you're the best and you're a creepy egomaniac. I don't want that. I think that integrity would be a very important word to me. And don't expect, link it maybe a little bit into Stoicism, that we haven't talked about it, but I think it's a very interesting field of philosophy. Don't expect the world to make it a nice and pleasant place for you. Life is not pleasant. Sometimes people will try to lie to you or make bad things to you, but you don't have to be resentful. You just have to deal with it. You have to understand it, and you have to do good. And if having a certain amount of self-esteem is going to be useful, because you will always rise up again thanks to that safety net of self-esteem or of having a decent and power personality.
Very good, man. Thanks a lot, man. Thanks for...
Too much philosophy.
Not enough, man. I love it. Especially stoicism. You brought in stoicism. Okay. I can't ask for much more. So Ignacio, thanks for coming to Prague. Thanks for being on the show, man. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
All right.
Vincent, see you next time.
Of course, yeah. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Do This With Your Life. Now, I've got a question for you. Do you know anyone specifically that you think this episode could help? If so, please share this podcast with that person. The purpose of this show is to help people overcome challenges, solve problems, and take the next step in life. If you think that's a worthy cause, please visit our website, dothispodcast.com, and click on the button to become a patron of our show. Any little donation helps. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. There you can follow us. You can leave comments, ideas for future shows, and receive notifications every time we release an episode. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And remember, you are the reason we do this podcast.